Welcome to this edition of According to Your Faith. Discover how health and healing can be yours through God's Word. Now, here's your host, Clay Copps.
Hello, friend, and welcome to this edition of According to Your Faith. My name is Clay Copps, and I'm glad to be with you. And the subject I've chosen for this week is called Brought to Jesus. And this really astounds me a little bit because I was reading through the Gospels and looking at the ministry of Jesus and just seeing, what was happening there. And as I started looking, I realized how many times it said they brought someone to Him. And I went through and I found out that there was about probably over 40 times where it says they used the words brought to Jesus, besought, they came, they followed, they were being brought, or the word bringing, beseeching, cast, pressed, carried, and another one says they laid the sick in the streets. So I started thinking about this and realized that what if our churches, nowadays had, a Sunday where you bring to Jesus, everybody who's sick. And I just wonder what it would be like if we had a ministry like that, where Jesus was put out as the healer through, those who will lay hands on the sick and anoint him with oil, those type of things. But how many times it says they were brought? And so I thought I'd read a little bit out of Luke chapter 5. This is a story that might be very familiar to you. It's about the four men who brought the man that was on the bed, on the couch, in to see Jesus. Now, this is an interesting story because this happened at a house where Jesus was. And let's see if we can pick it up here. Let's look at verse 15 of chapter 5. But so much the more there went a fame abroad of him, and great multitudes came together to hear and to be healed by him of their diseases. And he withdrew himself into the wilderness and prayed. And it came to pass on a certain day, as he was teaching, that there were Pharisees and doctors of the law sitting by, which were come out of every town of Galilee and Judea and Jerusalem, and the power of the Lord was present to heal them. Now it says the power of the Lord was present to heal them, but I noticed none of them got healed. And then it says, and behold, four men actually, Mark says, brought in a bed a man which was taken with a palsy, and they sought means to bring him in and to lay him before Jesus. But when they could not find by which way they might come in because of the multitude, they went up upon the housetop and let him down through the tiling with his couch into the midst before Jesus. And so notice in we just read that in verse 18, it says, and behold, men brought in a bed. So there's that word brought, and you'll just find that over and over in these instances where people were sick and they needed to get to Jesus. Because there was usually a crowd around him of some sort, multitude or many people, and it was not easy to get to him. But it says they brought the man in a bed which was taken with palsy, and they actually took him through the roof and they laid him down in front of Jesus. Now this is quite a deal because, they had to get up on the roof with this man, whether he knew them or not. I don't know if he was their friend or whether they just said, hey, let's get Joe and let's take him to Jesus. You don't know if they were doing it as his buddy or just grabbing him. But anyway, it says when Jesus saw, this is verse 20, when Jesus saw their faith, he said unto him, man, thy sins are forgiven thee. When he saw their faith. Now that's very interesting because he's talking about the faith of the men who are bringing this guy, but it also could be the man who's, letting himself be dropped in front of Jesus on a stretcher, and so the faith of the men, and Jesus saw that. And so I wonder if, when people are brought to Jesus, if he can see, which he can, he sees their faith and he wonders, well, I want to reward this faith. They're bringing this man, believing that I'm going to do this. And so I just thought, as I thought about this, I thought, sick people were brought to Jesus. He didn't have to go looking for them. They believed that if they got to him, they would be healed. They were hungry for his touch. Many were desperate. They showed their faith by seeking him out. And then I found that word was used so many times. So anyway, there's many instances in the Gospels where you can look up scriptures like this and find these words used. The other one I want to show you is actually over in Acts. If we turn over to Acts, I'm just turning in my Bible here. Acts chapter 5, this is the story of Peter's shadow. And we'll read starting with verse 15. It says, "Insomuch that they," the people, "brought forth the sick into the streets." Now, in the Greek it says into every street, "and laid them on beds and couches, that at the least the shadow of Peter passing by might overshadow some of them. There came also a multitude out of the cities round about unto Jerusalem, bringing sick folks, and them which were vexed with unclean spirits, and they were healed every one." So this is a mighty outpouring of God here in this chapter. And it talks about they brought forth the sick into the streets. Now, people could have just stayed home. They could have said, I'm watching TV. I'm kind of busy. I don't know if I want to go down there where that meeting is, where that guy is. There'd be a lot of people there, probably hard to get in, and I gotta get up from my couch, and get ready and, getting taken care of. They couldn't get up, but they were on the couch and they had to be taken there. So that was not an easy thing for them to be taken there. But it says that they brought forth the sick into every street and laid them on beds and couches. Now, this is just so the shadow of Peter. Now, this is something I'll talk about later, but this is the gifts of healings. The shadow of Peter. It doesn't have anything to do with especially anyone's faith. This is it's a giving of God by the gifts of healings, a shadow of Peter. I don't know that I've ever heard of anybody's shadow healing anybody before or seen it anywhere. But anyway, this is the shadow of Peter, that it passed by them would overshadow some of them and they would be healed. So here you have this situation where they're coming together and they're looking at this, if I can just get into that spot where I can get Peter's shadow on me. So I'm sure people were brought, and that's the key. That's the key. They were brought, and they were brought. And so I just wondered if we were to bring people today, how many of us can say we've brought someone, to church, or we got to church and there was people there, maybe in a wheelchair, and someone said, "Hey, I want to take you. They're having this healing service, or they're having something happen at church, and I want you to be there. Would you think about going with me?" And they say, "What's happening there?" And you say, "Well, I think Jesus is going to be there, and I think they're going to preach on healing. I think you should go. I think it'd be important for you to go." And maybe that person says, "Well, I don't know. I mean, that sounds interesting to me. I might be interested in that." "You mean people are getting healed down there?" And you say, "Yeah, we've seen people healed in our church." And so the person says, "Well, man, I might like to go and see that. I've never seen anybody healed. I'd like to be a part of that." So the person says, "Well, yeah, I'll do that." So just in that situation, a person being brought to Jesus, that's a pretty huge thing. Okay, I've got a bunch of scriptures here regarding this subject taken out of the Gospels, and I thought I'd go ahead and read them to you. I said there was about 40 of these examples, so I wanted to give you a good background of these. In Matthew, it says, "They brought him all that were sick," verse 424. "They followed him great multitudes. There came a leper." These are all just different scriptures here in Matthew. "There came unto him a centurion. They brought unto him many. They brought to him a man sick. There came a ruler, and worshipped him. There came behind and touched him. 2 blind men followed him. 2 blind men came to him. They brought to him a man dumb. They brought to him one possessed. They came and cried unto him. They cast them down at Jesus' feet." Now in Luke it says, this is verse 4, verse 38, "They besought him for her. Divers diseases brought unto him. A man full of leprosy besought him. Multitudes came together to hear and be healed. Men brought a palsy man in a bed. Multitudes came to hear and be healed." In Mark it says, verse 140, says, "There came a leper beseeching him. There came bringing one of a palsy. Then pressed upon him to touch him. They carried about in beds where he was. They laid the sick in the streets and besought him. They came and fell at his feet. They brought unto him many, and that one that was deaf. They bring a blind man unto him. I've brought many unto thee, and my son has come unto thee. They brought children for him to touch. So there's all kinds of instances here where people came for healing, and you don't always find those when you just read it, but if you look for that, you'll see it. But I thought, man, wouldn't that be something if churches were like this, And I know churches are, but I mean, just as a general thing, if they had something like a healing service, we're going to have a healing service, and we just want everyone to come who's sick. If you've got any problems physically, we want you to come. We're going to present Jesus as a healer. And, if they did that and people were healed, they're coming, they're bringing people. I mean, it's one thing to say, well, I'll send an email, or I'll maybe get the message when it's over, or I'll just, be one of those. If you were to actually come, receive from Jesus, from someone who's bringing you to where prayer is made and Jesus is there healing people, oh, what a difference it would make in the crowds we have. Because if a church got to that level to where they were having people, say, once every 6 weeks or once every couple months, if they were having people healed in their service, then they could say to other people, hey, you ought to come to this church. We have a healing service once every 8 weeks, and we bring people. We don't wait, just let them stay home and be sick. We bring someone who's not feeling well, and we expect God to move on their behalf. And the person says, really, you're bringing people? Man, I would go for that. I'd love to be healed. And so people start getting the attitude that this is a church where, God is healing people. It would change in the situation in the church or in the community. People would start coming because people are getting healed. And what a change that would be if they just started attending because of that reason. And other people saw that, and man, they said, hey, 8 weeks ago we had people healed. We're going to have another service like that, where people get saved and people get born again and they get healed. So I just think it would be a great thing for churches or anybody, to do, just to bring the sick to Jesus to be healed. And I know it's exciting and it's a good thing. And I think you should go through and just take your time and study those scriptures on, what it takes to be healed and how people were brought to Jesus. And, if you'll do that, you'll really find some interesting things. I just pray that you do that and that God blesses you. And I just want you to remember that at this broadcast, this is somewhere where you can find out that it's God's will to heal you. And, the scripture says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
We hope that you've enjoyed this edition of According to Your Faith. Tune in next time for another inspiring message about God's love for you.